IMSA looks poised to drop Mid-Ohio from the 2023 calendar, and its replacement has certainly raised some eyebrows. And NASCAR will be racing on the streets of Chicago in 2023. Along with it, they announced that IMSA is going to be joining them. We're going to break it all down for you. Buckle up, because you're about to go off in the S's. We're going to start off with the Mid-Ohio news and the event that very well might be gone from the IMSA calendar in 2023. All of these rumors came about when Marshall Pruitt, in his weekly mailbag article on Racer.com answering listener questions, well, on July 13th, his article, he goes a little bit out of his way to talk about this as well. When a follower asked about a possible Formula E trip to Indianapolis Motor Speedway, he said in his response, "I can tell you that if you are a fan of sports car racing, be prepared to buy tickets for a 2-hour and 40 IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship race on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course in September of 2023. It is set to replace Mid-Ohio." So of course, a little bit of background on the Mid-Ohio race. It has been on the WeatherTech calendar since 2018 as part of a 2-hour and 40-minute race on the IMSA calendar that usually takes place in May. This year, in addition to the WeatherTech Championship, it also played host to the Michelin Pilot Challenge, the IMSA Prototype Challenge, and 2 rounds of the Mazda Idemitsu MX-5 Cup. The proposed date of September for this race at Indy would mean that it would be the second to last event on the IMSA calendar and would be the finale for the Sprint Cup Championship. Well, it could be, until a couple of days later when Sports Car 365 reported the potential for the event to expand to an endurance format and the Michelin Endurance Cup in 2024. Sports Car 365 reported as Indianapolis Motor Speedway is poised to replace Mid-Ohio on next year's WeatherTech Championship schedule, according to multiple paddock sources. The race, likely to occur in the second half of the year, is understood to be a 2-hour and 40-minute race, before potentially expanding into a 5th Michelin Endurance Cup round for 2024. Formal announcement is set to come at IMSA's State of the Sport address at Road America next month, which will see confirmation of the 2023 calendar. Now, this is a very interesting bit of information that's coming out of this article. It seems kind of, at this point, that's a foregone conclusion that Mid-Ohio is going to be off the calendar and Indianapolis is going to be in. There's been rumors surrounding this. You'll remember back a few months, WEC has been looking at Indy as a potential landing spot for a race there, and it looks like IMSA is going to be the first one to take that confirmed dive. So, what is this all going to mean? It's going to mean the loss of a great course in Mid-Ohio, and a little bit more information kind of started coming to light over the following week. A follow-up question came into Marshall Pruitt again in his July 20th edition of the Racer Mailbag. This time, a fan asked if the state of the facilities perhaps played a role in IMSA not planning to return to the venue, with the facilities being reported to need quite a bit of repairs and upgrades to stay up to the level that you need in order to support a top-level series like IMSA, or maybe even IndyCar, which currently also visits the facility. Marshall Pruitt would just simply agree with the statement, saying that it can't be a coincidence that that potentially losing Mid-Ohio amongst these discussions of the facilities being needing some repair. Now, this move creates an interesting potential domino effect here. So unless the schedule has some tweaking done to it, which has been fairly consistent over the years. Could we maybe see like a VIR race that's right now in late August moved up to earlier in the calendar? Unless if we see some shuffling around like that, then there's going to be almost a month off between the rounds at Laguna Seca and Detroit. That's going off this year's calendar, and we know that the dates haven't been confirmed for next year. But that's a pretty big gap that needs to be kind of filled in here. Now, and on a personal note, I'm not a huge fan of the move. Putting everything aside about the state of the facilities, if that can get sorted out when we're comparing these two tracks, I'm not liking the move away from Mid-Ohio. And the reason for this is, I see IMSA having a really unique brand of track. And the current IMSA tracks that we visit really gives it an old school feel, you know? And it's really unique from the World Endurance Championship or really most of the other GT race series that you find throughout the world. And by replacing Mid-Ohio, which is, you know, classic old school circuit, Indy, it's not that old school track feel that you get with CTMP, with Sebring, with Mid-Ohio, with Lime Rock. Like, all of these tracks are very historic and not that, of course, Indy, you can't get much more historic than Indy. But when you think of Indy, you think of the oval. You think of the Indianapolis 500. You don't think of the road course. And if you do think of the road course, you think of that F1 disaster that they had a number of years ago. But I'm really interested. I really think that this gets away from that IMSA brand by moving to the IMS road course. And I'm interested to hear what you all think. What do you think of the move? Do you like swapping out Mid-Ohio for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course? Let me know down in those comments below. The other piece of massive IMSA news that has come out over the last week is that NASCAR is set to have its first street race in their history. Now, wait a minute before you go away here. I know we don't normally cover NASCAR, and you're thinking, how can this be IMSA related? Well, there's a very big piece to this NASCAR puzzle, and IMSA fills it. NASCAR has announced that the Chicago Street Race weekend will take place on July 1st and 2nd in 2023. Circuit's going to be a 12-mile, 2.2-mile temporary road course through downtown Chicago, but most importantly, it will feature an IMSA-sanctioned racing series that they are going to compete on Saturday of that NASCAR weekend. Now, instant reaction for me, being a Canadian IMSA fan, is, oh no, what does this mean for the CTMP IMSA round that's historically, you know, over the past number of years, taken place on that July 1st, or it often falls on also the July 4th long weekend, and all the celebrations that come about there. You know, I'm thinking, did COVID spell the end for CTMP on the calendar? Really, I think at the end of the day, you just need to take a step back and think of this logically. IMSA wants to maintain a presence in Canada. They're not going to want to get rid of CTMP. There's no indications of that at this point. You know, with the exception of the COVID years, IMSA, under its various series names, have been coming to the tracks consecutively since 1995, and overall 35 times since the first IMSA sanctioned race was held there in 1975. So it's not going to be CTMP that's losing out in this deal, and they're very likely, the more I think about it, not even going to be affected by this schedule news, and here's why. So I personally think that the round at Chicago, where IMSA is going to be participating, is going to be the MX5's the MX5 Cup that's going to be there supporting them. It makes sense to me. Of course, the MX5 has most recently supported NASCAR at Road America, and that was on the same weekend that the IMSA IMPC and the WeatherTech Championship raced at CTMP, as well as the Prototype Challenge, and it was well received. It didn't, you know, speaking to some of the drivers in the MX5 Cup at Watkins Glen the weekend before, you know, lots of them were bummed that they weren't going to be heading up to CTMP. But they were also excited that they were getting to support NASCAR. Like, that's a big deal, especially for lots of those guys. So much exposure. And not only exposure for those drivers, but great exposure for the series. And the more that I think about it, it just kind of makes more sense that that Road America weekend was just kind of a trial run for NASCAR and for IMSA to see how well it would be received and how it could work logistically. I could really only narrow it down to the MX-5 Cup or the Porsche Cup cars heading to Chicago to support NASCAR there. But the more I thought about it, Porsche Cup, you know, they have their thing in place, it seems like, with Toronto Indy, and this would lead to, I think, 3 weekends in a row, and if not 3 in a row, then 3 of 4 consecutive weekends that that Porsche Cup would be on the road. So I don't know if IMSA really wants to do that. But I think it also needs to be said, and something that needs to be considered in all of this, is NASCAR on a street course. I mean, we have it in iRacing. We kind of have an idea of what to expect. But is it possible that the Porsche Cup cars could be faster than the NASCAR Cup cars at a race weekend where Cup is supposed to be headlining? I don't know how possible that really is, but considering it's a short road course, and we know that those stock cars really, they separate themselves normally from the Porsche Cup cars in their speed down the straightaways, where the Cup cars are going to be way better through the corners and in braking. Well, it's a pretty short road course, and I just don't know. It would be pretty close between those cars. So I think that's why we're going to lean towards the MX-5 Cup, and that's why it's my choice to have them support the NASCAR weekend. And I just have a hard time wrapping my head around them pulling away like Michelin Pilot Challenge or something like that, especially if they do want to maintain that weekend at CTMP in that same date. It would just be so much work for them to split the paddock like that. There's so many teams that do double duty on those weekends, and there's a reason that Michelin Pilot Challenge supports WeatherTech on their races. You know, they work well together, and so many of the teams do both. So I just think with the amount of crossover between those, it's going to be tricky to split those up. So at the end of the day, I think it's going to be the MX-5 Cup cars that are running with NASCAR at Chicago. But what do you think? Let me know about that in the comments below. Last race out at Lime Rock Park went down to the wire with the leader running out of gas in the final couple of corners of the last lap. Get up to speed with our Lime Rock recap right here. And one final shout out to all you viewers who support what we do by either tuning in or supporting us on Patreon. It's very much appreciated. Until the next one though, I hope everyone has a great race weekend and doesn't go off in the S's.